been a long time since we've had a writer on this show, and this next writer is a true survivor. His writings are rooted in the hardness of reality, but in the truth of a longtime friend. Meet Sacagawea Hill, a Mohawk born in Buffalo, New York. Doc has led many lives within his own. His book, From Attica to Gustafson Lake, is about one Mohawk man's journey through some of life's most extreme experiences. His wife and partner in crime, Sandra Brodeur, co-authored the book, and she has been a mountain of support for him and his family. A true inspiring man and a true family friend, this interview will inspire.
The name of the book is called The Autobiography of Sacagawea, or Splitting the Sky, with my wife, Sandra Brodeur. She keeps the door. And the subtitle is called From Attica to Gustafson Lake. Subtitle underneath that is called Unmasking the Secrets of the Psychosexual Energy and the Struggle for Original People's Title. It speaks about the many years that I did in residential schools, boarding schools that was called in the States, the same thing as the residential school. The many foster homes, being abducted by the Child Welfare Department in the U.S., taken into foster homes and eventually put into reform schools and boarding schools while I was a very young boy. And I go on to outline during the time that all the years that I did inside these various institutions, how I rebelled the authority and how I rebelled the beatings and the tortures and the sexual abuse, or the attempts at sexual abuse. I did roughly 16 years of my life in and out of prisons, and I talk about being at the age of 19 sent to a prison called Attica State Prison. While I was there in prison, I was accused of allegedly killing a cop during the time of this insurrection. What really happened is that steel bars, gates that was holding where this man was in, about 60 of us were pulling on these bars and these gates, and the gate went down, hit the man in the head, and he subsequently died 2 days later. I then go on to talk about how we occupied that prison because of the prison administrations and the kind of torture and abuse and the murders that were being committed by state officials. I then go on to detail that we held that prison for 5 days, and I tell the story of how we democratically set up negotiations between the state of New York to deal with the conditions. And subsequently, what basically happened was that New York State sent in 1,000 state trooper types, state trooper officials actually, and sent them in with every conceivable arms, form of weaponry you could possibly conceive. The state troopers unleashed 50,000 rounds of bullets in less than 15 minutes. There was 43 people that were murdered in cold blood, including 11 of their own that they killed in the retaking of the prison. I go on to tell how 61 of us had been indicted, and I was the only one that would be ultimately convicted for any charge arising out of Attica State Prison. I then go on to tell what happened in May of 1979. I was eventually released after a number of attempts to kill me, and I had involved myself on a number of fronts of establishing various major demonstrations to stop the relocation of the Navajo people at Big Mountain in 1986. I brought together 8,000 people at a demonstration in front of the mall in Washington, D.C. In 1992, I brought together 10,000 people at a conference to demand a seat in the UN General Assembly as independent sovereign nations. In 1993, I was asked to attend a conference up in Edmonton, and I eventually came up and fell in love with my co-author here, the beautiful Sandra Brodeur. She keeps the door. And we fell very much in love and have two very beautiful children together. I was also a sun dancer for a number of years and had observed the Sundance religion. I went to dance at Gustafson Lake in '94, and in '95 I was asked by the medicine man, John Stevens, to lead that dance. There was an incident. We were trying to keep cows from coming inside of the arbor while we were sun dancing, and ultimately we put up some fences wherein a ranch hand by the name of Lyle James and all of his cowboys, tried to evict us from those grounds. The Attorney General at that time was a guy by the name of Ujjal Dosanjh. Ujjal Dosanjh, according to documents basically called upon military assistance under John Crescen's administration, and through the Department of National Defense, planned a military operation known as Wallaby, as well as the RCMP's operational plan known as Iron Horse. 400 RCMP were sent in there with the specific duty of assault weapons to kill us. But we tell about the government's total covert Indian war up at Gustafson Lake, and how we ultimately ended up in a situation where, after exposing all the lies that the Canadian government told during the course of this standoff, and the fact that my wife and I basically had the international media flooding, as well as connections from around the world like Ramsey Clark and the Center for Constitutional Rights, people to try to stop the killing at Gustafson Lake. Everybody that was in the camp would have been dead on September the 17th, because otherwise nobody would have been able to get the fact, get all the media up there to stop them from making the actual kill, and also to get them up there to see what was really going on. Then I go back and I talk about the question of unmasking the secrets of the psychosexual energies, and I talk about what I saw when I was in Sing Sing prison in 1977. What I saw was relative to awakening of the light within, and for me, I have to share that secret with all my brothers and sisters. I believe I have to give this light back to all of my relations, what was given to me. That was my first reason for writing the book. The other reason for writing this book was to show how many years I've been involved in this movement for self-determination and sovereignty, and to try to inspire others to say that no matter how much we are under the yoke of colonial oppression, in our struggle to be a sovereign, independent people, we must continue to struggle for the next generations, for the 7 generations ahead. We can't stop struggling for the liberation of our youth and for the generations to come.
Amen to that, brother. Welcome to the Burning Shiva Hour. Splitting the Sky, I understand that you've been a hemp advocate for some time. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, in 1979 I was released after doing just about 12 years in prison, and I was the only person that was convicted as a result of being a ringleader during the 1971 Attica rebellion.
Wow.
And in 1979 I was finally released on parole. The only reason I was released on parole because Governor Rockefeller then was facing Senate confirmation hearings for the Vice President of the United States under Gerald Ford, and during the course of that, his subcommittee hearings for his nomination as Vice President of the U.S., the Democratic Party bashed him with his record on calling for the bloodbath at Attica on September 13th, 1971. And so ultimately, he tried to suppress a grand jury investigation into the murders that were committed by the New York State Police and corrections officers at that time, just cold guards, who went in there with their own guns and retook the prison and killed 43 people and wounded and maimed it for life 80 of us during that retaking of the prison. Finally, I was the only person that was convicted for allegedly killing the police during the time of the insurrection, which in fact the guy died as a result of some bars, cast iron gates that we had pulled out the walls. They fell down, hit him in the head, and he died 2 days later. Attica was heard all around the world, and I became the #1 political prisoner in North America. So at that time, in 1979, when I got released, while I was out, I came across, I met some really, really good hemp activists. I met Jack Hearn, who wrote the book Emperor Wears No Clothes, Dana Beal, and a bunch of other people from New York City, where I was living and residing. And during that time, they gave me the book Emperor Wears No Clothes, and I was going through it, and they basically briefed me as to what you could do with the hemp, commercial hemp. And I was totally taken by the fact that you could make so many thousands of different products. Of course, you can get rope, and you can get plastics and paints and oils and gas and wood products. And I thought to myself at that time when I first heard it that it would be just so critical to be able to get this sacred plant and to be able to cultivate it in Indian territories and create prototypes to mass produce hemp to revigorate our devastated economies.
Wow.
So I was invited on a number of occasions, as the more I learned about hemp, I was invited on a number of occasions to speak in front of the White House with the hemp activists every year. And I gave a number of speeches, and the more I learned about it, the more I realized that hemp could totally help native peoples in our territories and our ways to revigorate not only our economic bases, but a strong economic basis within our territories would strengthen our position of sovereignty on the question of international and constitutional law.
Wow. Now, do you see cannabis as like an indigenous right of natives? That's something that they were using long before a white man came here?
Yeah, I'd heard stories from various peoples, medicine peoples in my nations. One elder by the name of Mad Bear Anderson told me, he was a very famous medicine man, he told me his people were the Tuscarora, and they're part of the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy, and Tuscarora means, in their language, it was a Shoshone language then, and Tuscarora means hemp shirt wearers. This is what the Shoshones called the Tuscaroras, because we had, or the Tuscarora Nation had shirts that were made from hemp fiber. If you read the story of the founding of the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy, you'll read the story of the Ganawida, and he talks about the peacemaker. He's the one that founded the Great Law, the guy in Nagoa. And in the story of the formulation of the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ganawida talks about when we would hold Grand Council, where the whole concept of the referendum, the people's referendum, came from the Great Law. The 2/3 majority vote came from our system of the Great Law. The women's suffrage movement came from the Great Law. And the whole number of the whole question of the right to national self-defense came from the Great Law. So, and it was the most highly sophisticated system of the democratic process known to civilization around the world 700 years ago by this prophet Ganawida. But if you look in the story of the formulation of the Iroquois Confederacy, they said that when you sit the Rodiani, the peace chiefs, down in council, they shall be seated upon mats made from hemp.
Wow.
Now, I remember talking with Mad Bear, and he told me that years ago, the old people used to cultivate fields of hemp, hundreds of years ago, and that the old medicine people would come out with their flutes at nighttime on a full moon with all the twinkly stars, and they used to sing and play the flute for the hemp, because the hemp had very magical, mystical powers that allowed them to see, after consuming it, allowed them to see things from the other side.
Wow.
The veil between this world and the spirit world.
Well, on that note, I know in Morrison, Ontario, there's records of 500-year-old native pipes that used tobacco that's like 10 times stronger than tobacco used today, but also hemp. Is hemp something then that you think that they shared to teach themselves wisdom or find wisdom?
Oh, I am completely believe that hemp has been known throughout our culture for thousands of years. There's oral traditions to that, and there's documented proof to that. Just like I say, you know, that hemp has been consumed for thousands of years. Cannabis has grown, you know, has grown for thousands of years over here, and the use has been known for thousands of years. And I believe that we did international trade, and we did international commerce, you know, with peoples in Africa and Europe. And certainly, you know, when we visited Africa, we certainly visited people that did consume hemp. It's a known historical fact. You were going to say something about the Black Elks?
Yeah, Black Elk's vision. You know, in my first book, Green Gold, Tree Life, Marijuana, Magic, and Religion, I had a chapter on, you know, hemp in North America, and one of the things I came across, and we were talking about this earlier, was Black Elk's great vision. And Black Elk describes a herb sent down from the morning star, and it describes how this morning star herb replaces the buffalo, which had been killed off by the white man. When the buffalo rolls over, this morning star herb grows in its place. And I know, and perhaps you can tell us more about this, a number of tribes have since, that used to be buffalo hunters in past centuries, have since started growing industrial hemp and even cannabis, I think, the Mohawks. Do you see cannabis as any sort of relative of this myth?
Yes. Actually, what it was is Black Elk had this prophecy that when the sacred hoop of life, the circle of life, the wholeness of life had been interrupted by the incursion of foreign peoples, the white race, and their values. What would happen was eventually his people, the Sioux people, would eventually starve to death. But as they were starving to death under extreme forms of oppression, there would come somebody from the east, a native person with long flowing hair on the curly side, and would introduce to the Sioux people a miraculous plant that would be called the Daybreak Star plant. Mm-hmm. And I believe he was talking about the marijuana plant, or the hemp plant, cannabis. And what I found was, it was kind of what I was saying before earlier when we discussed it, is that when Black Elk had this prophecy, I thought it was kind of funny because a friend of mine is a Mohawk by the name of Tom Cook from Akwesasne Mohawk territory, and he married a woman who's from South Dakota, Sioux. And while he was there, he had actually read in the High Times magazine part of the interview that I gave about hemp cultivation, the necessity to develop hemp within our communities to boost our economic self-sufficiency as a people, so that we're not have a codependency upon a welfare state, so that we can continue to resist and act on international and constitutional laws relative to our self-determination, and to stand up on the principles of the great law. And in that process, Tom Hemp had read my interview, and he said, geez, he said, my brother, Doc, which is my nickname, he said, geez, he said, Doc is right, this is what we need to do. So he had sort of lobbied the tribal council down there to cultivate fields of wild hemp. Now, you have to know a little bit of the history on that. What happened was during the time that the Jesuits were in there, they were trying to colonize people's minds with their wrong ideals about God and Christianity. And so what they'd done was they came in there, and ironically, the Jesuits were growing hemp in Sioux territory so that they could make their own black robes, they could make the paper for their Bible, and they could make rope and other food products.
Porridge from the seeds, yeah.
Right, porridge from the seeds. So this is how they sustained themselves, the Jesuits did, and I can applaud them for that act of self-sufficiency. But what happened was after the big, after the big repression by the United States government, the DEA, Anslinger, and the whole attack against, and then what's his name, Hearst.
Hearst, yeah,
Randall Hearst, and the way that they tried to suppress the use of cannabis and hemp in North America because it was cutting into Randolph Hearst, paper industry and his profits. And so, understanding that, so finally what they did is they made it illegal to grow hemp in North America right after the Second World War. And so after that, they put they told the Jesuits they could no longer do the hemp. So the Jesuits kind of packed up their Bible and left the area. And what they left there, they left all this wild hemp. After all the years of when they left, this hemp kept growing wild, and all of a sudden you had like 500 million acres of land with this wild hemp grown everywhere with stalks that thick,
wow,
like trees. So my friend Tom, he sequestered, really, in a sense, but he commissioned the tribal council to go out there and harvest this hemp that's been sitting there. And the first 3 times he did it, they said no. But on the 4th attempt, they finally got one of the chiefs over there was named Joe American Horse, and he decided he broke the tie. It was 7-7. He broke it, made it 8-7 in favor of cultivating the hemp. Now, they eventually went out there and they cultivated the hemp, and of course they got the hemp and they turned it in, sent it down to different factories to cultivate the fiber, and then they also shook the seeds, and they got the seeds to make, hemp different products, hemp food cake and all this other stuff. Tom's gone on, by the way, I guess he got about a $60,000 grant there from, with the woman that, the body shop.
Oh, yeah, the lady has a white shop.
Yeah, and they're making hemp bricks out there now, right? They're making bricks from hemp bricks, and they're building houses out there in the reserve from hemp brick, right? And as well as, I guess he's doing this in partnership with Woody Harrelson. But I'm saying that what they're doing out there, they're cultivating the hemp, and then they had another brother by the name of, Sioux brother by the name of Alex Whitebloom, I believe his name is, who decided that, Jesus is the way to go for our people. So he's been challenging the federal government on the question of growing hemp, which is illegal in the U.S., but to growing commercial hemp on Indian land. So, because that's an Indian venture, the Indians passed a resolution, okay, we can do this, and so the government is to butt out, so to speak, facetiously speaking, butt out, right? So, so here they are in Native territory, in Sioux country, and this Alex Whitebloom was raided 3 times by the federal government just as he got his crops up. Now this 4th time, apparently, he got the crops up and he harvested the crops and sent it down to Tennessee to be a plant down there, a textile plant down there in Tennessee, bought his product and paid him up for that. I guess they're trying to, right now they're trying to arrest him for doing that now. But the whole point is that it was basically my talk in front of the White House on the whole question of hemp, which was given to me by the hemp movement in New York. That got my friend, right, who's another Mohawk, inspired to cultivate the fields of wild hemp left over by the Jesuits, which inspired another man to start challenging the federal government on the question of growing in unceded Indian land.
Wow.
So it's when you look at it, it's a fantastic story. It is a fantastic story, and it is just one of the many, I guess you could almost say essays, if it was written about, on the whole question of indigenous peoples exercising indigenous development of our own economies to sustain ourselves and to be completely independent from any dependency upon welfare existence. And so in other words, what we're trying to do is eradicate the whole necessity for being tied to our colonial masters.
Replace the buffalo for the
replace the buffalo. Just kill the buffalo, so give us the buds.
And so the buffalo rolls over like in Black Elk prophecy, and the morning star herb goes up. No, listeners and viewers of the Burning Shiva Hour will know my interest in the tree of life and stuff. And I'd like to point out that in the book of Revelation, Jesus says, "I will give you the morning star," and then he says, "I will give you to the tree in the midst of the garden, in the center of the hoop." And he says, at the end of it, on either side of the river of life stood the tree of life, bearing 12 manners of fruit, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. And this is not something that's limited to Christianity. These Jesuits, they didn't know anything about that. They didn't really understand the deeper meaning of that. And unconsciously, they were divinely able to unconsciously bring back the native people that hemp that had destroyed the buffalo that white culture had pretty well wiped out when they arrived.
There's another interpretation of the tree of life, by the way, which deals with understanding the power of the psychosexual energies of the human beings. And the tree of life was symbolic of the cerebrospinal system.
Kundalini.
Yeah, awakening of the Kundalini. Now, I don't know if your viewers know much about the Kundalini, but I can tell you it has everything to do with their psychosexual energy. So if you read this book, it's called The Autobiography of Splitting the Sky, from Attica to Gustafson Lake. And in there is another subtitle that says, Unmasking the Secrets of the Psychosexual Energy and the Question of Original People's Title. In this book, I tell you how we won the battle at Attica, how we fought and won the battle for liberation and self-sufficiency and independence up at Gustafson Lake in 1995. But more so, I tell you how on death row in 1977 to 2 years before I was paroled in death row, I tell you how I found the secret of awakening the psychosexual energies. Through tantric sex practices and, of course, self-indulgence. But I tell you how I awakened the light within, a full awakening of the Kundalini while I was in death row in Sing Sing prison in 1977. You want to know what the secret of life is? It's in this book. I advocate hemp. I advocate knowledge of the light, because once you have knowledge of the light of who you truly are, that you and the Creator are one. You're no longer a slave. You're no longer a slave to a system that wants to make you bend it or bow itself to its will.
I did want to ask you, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now. It seems that George Bush is intent on bringing war to the Iraqi people and possibly igniting a flame of violence in the Middle East like none we've ever seen before. Do you have any thoughts on what people should do at this time, how they should take action, how the indigenous people of the world, let alone the native people of North America, just the people of the earth? Have you got any advice for them in these trying times of what they should do?
Oh, you've just given me a very heavy question. First of all, I think that George Bush is a lunatic. He's a warmonger, to say the least. I believe that George Bush is definitely working the agenda for the Illuminati. He's working an agenda for what his father basically started in terms of the New World Order. I heard Gary Rice make a statement after the 9/11 situation that basically said, since 9/11 occurred, and since the quote-unquote, since we've been attacked from outside, we can now accomplish the goals and aspirations of the New World Order that George Bush I put in his presidency in the early 1980s. What we've got basically is we got Bush, who is dependent upon the international oil cartels to begin with, to seize. He has shown us that he's sending in massive military forces in order to extrapolate all of the oil from the Caspian Sea, to establish the pipeline that would, through Unicol, which the current minister, prime minister of that country, of Afghanistan, is a board member of Unicol, to run that pipeline all the way from the Caspian Sea to Pakistan. And then, of course, we've got the saber rattling going on right now around Iraq, because Iraq is the second biggest supplier of oil in the world. And of course, then if we extend what this administration is going to do in the long run, they're also going to probably take us to war into Iran, the so-called axis of evil. And then eventually they're going to take us into South Korea to extrapolate the oil. It's a known fact that there's only probably enough oil supply left for another 10 years at the rate of what is being done, being utilized right now by the whole industrial, military, technological, pharmaceutical complex. So what we have to look at is we as a people should be thinking in terms of promoting hemp for biomass, for oil and gas production, to get the machines to run, to substitute as an alternative the greedy, mercenary drive that's going on by the powers, the establishment right now for fossil fuels, for the cartel that controls that. So the hemp movement has a major obligation to try to utilize biomass and hemp oil to supplant and to try to diminish the effect of those who have the interest in drug and oil cartels international, which is what the Bush administration is all about. And the thing about it is, when we're looking at the levels of people's involvement, most people are not even looking at what happened at 9/11, what really happened behind there, because most people don't want to face the fact that it was architected in order to instill the fascist police state that's going on a national and international levels right now. So if you can't get a grip and you can't get a hold and see what's really going on, and commit yourself to address those issues and deals with those issues, and by any means necessary, whatever it takes, I think that the hemp movement, which constitutes millions of people worldwide, can at least begin to exhume these troops, to put these troops out, be responsible for these troops, and every time you take a puff, You know what I mean? Know that the intelligence that comes from that plant is telling you also to act on your knowledge. Because what is knowledge without action? It's nothing. It's nothing. So, the hemp movement has a key to arresting the corporate beast. Demand that hemp biomass be used for gas and for oil. To oil the machines. Start there. Hemp's uses are unlimited. Unlimited. And it's a gift by the Great Spirit. I'm a full advocate of hemp, and I will be till the day I die.
Wow. Revelation, revolution, renovation. Well, it's been a great pleasure splitting the sky. And what's your website so people can find out more about it and where they can get this book?
Two things. If you want to get on my website, it's www.splittingthesky.com, all one word. You can get my email address off of there if you wish to email me. And if anybody's interested in me doing any levels of lecturing anywhere, you can contact me at the same address, webpage, or email, and or my home phone, 250-679-7743. I even take prank calls, or sometimes it breaks up the border.
Okay, thanks again.